Welcome, everyone. This is a special edition of CAD Chats. I'm Mikkel, I'm your host. We do this once a month, but today we're doing a special one. And what's also special about it is normally we do this CAD Chat with other designers and product developers, people who are actually using the tools. But today we have the person or one of the people who is creating these digital tools that we are using. So please, everyone, give a warm welcome to the co-founder of Make the Dot, Emilie Ho. Hello, Emilie.
Hi.
Why don't you give us a little introduction to you and Make the Dot?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mikkel. Super honored to be here. My name is Emilie Ho. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Make the Dot. We're a collaborative apparel design platform supporting design, merchandising, and sales team to help move products along and help them build winning collections. And the reason why my co-founders and I started this platform is because we worked in the apparel industry throughout the past decade. Actually, we have a blend of experience with both software technology and also fashion supply chain, and we noticed a lot of challenges when it comes to design, product development, and how teams would bring these products to market. And so we decided to jump out of the corporate that we were working at, called Li and Feng, and then we started building Make the Dot among us.
Nice. Okay, so this whole conversation started because we were talking about AI and talking about Style Builder, which is in Make the Dot. So the first thing I want to know is, let's just start with the basics. Like, what is generative AI?
It's a great question because a lot of the audience listening in might have used AI in some shape or form. I'm sure most people are familiar with ChatGPT nowadays, maybe with Gemini. And the format of generative AI at the moment is usually in a chat format, in a conversation where you give prompt and command to an AI, and it will give you either answers or some kind of results back in the form of, let's say, an image or even nowadays videos. And that's one form of AI. So that you could think of the chat interface as an interface on top of this large language model that currently is being developed. So this large language model has been trained on a lot of text data across different kind of data all over the internet, and is able to, that's why it's able to make sense of different contexts, and is so good at making sense of that context that it will be able to create different asset or imagery for you. But the chat interface is only one form of interface of how you leverage Gen AI. At Make the Dot, the way we do it is we like to think of it as we look at the designer's journey throughout concept development, design, and product development, how an end-to-end flow would look like when a collection gets built, and we apply AI where it makes sense. And underneath our platform, Gen AI is powering a lot of the creation for all our sketches. Mikkel, you mentioned Style Builder, which is the photorealistic ghost imagery of garments, as well as on model shots. All of these are powered by AI, but the way we approach it is a little bit different to other, I would say, general purpose AI tool, because we don't have a chat interface. Everything happens on a collaborative canvas, and you could do the designs directly on canvas, be it by yourself as a designer, or you could do it as a team. And it's a non-linear workflow. As you're sketching, you could also generate rendering, photoreal render, or you could be placing it on model. So it's a very fluid process. And the way that we approach this AI design is that we believe that prompting is actually quite hard for designers who are very, very visual, and most of the time, most designers are very visual, very creative people. So we wanted to make the prompting part a lot easier. So on Make the Dot, you don't need to know how to prompt to get the control results that you need. We work directly with manufacturers to have materials, to have fabrics and trims directly in there available, and everything is visual. So all you have to do is pick any kind of sketches, fabric, and colors that you need, and we basically combine those elements, and we have models in the background generating prompts on behalf of you, so that you still get the high quality visual output that you need. But throughout the way, that's how we're able to give you the control that you need, and also why the textures are extra photorealistic, because we use actual fabrication to train our models.
Nice, nice. So my second question was going to be, what makes Make the Dots tool Style Builder different? But you kind of alluded to that, and one of my favorite things is that I do not have to put a prompt in there to get something that looks really good and really detailed.
Yeah, because the main difference between us and a general purpose AI product is that we're built specifically for fashion. The no prompting user experience is just one of the early design decisions that we made. But other than that, because we're not really looking at how to fit AI into a product, we're really looking at the designer's workflow and then figuring out where AI makes sense, and we'll apply it accordingly. So for example, by us working with material suppliers directly, by having that data to train our model, then the outputs are also hyper realistic. And as a byproduct, also every single time when you generate any kind of visual asset on Make the Dot, it's not just an image. Unlike Gemini or ChatGPT, we also help you generate all the technical metadata, information around the style. So for example, all the style name, description, fabrication, composition, as well as the description of the silhouette. So a lot of what normally designers would have to manually type, either into Illustrator if you're making tech packs in Illustrator, or a PLM system where you have to type a lot of style information, you have to type a lot of bill of material information. So all of that is automatically generated and is attached to every single image that we have.
Nice, nice. So like half your BOM is done.
Exactly. So I would say that is really a big difference between us and general purpose AI solution. Those are great in the sense that there's so much that you could do, and in your day-to-day you might have many small little problems that a general purpose AI can address. But in your work, if you're a professional designer by trade, if you're a fashion designer and you're making garment at scale in any shape or form, then that very specific process, there are things that you need to repeatedly do day in, day out. That's why we built a tailored solution for the industry. Yeah.
Gotcha. I love that you've taken this designer first approach, and I'm wondering like what prompted that? Like what made you decide that you wanted designers or to address design problems as opposed to everybody else? Because normally, like when people are bringing systems, in my opinion, and I don't know this for sure, but it feels like when, as a designer sitting in front of a PLM system or whatever it is, they have not taken design into consideration. So I am wondering what made you decide like you wanted to address a lot of designer issues.
Yeah, it was from a direct experience of working with a lot of designers in brands, because as I mentioned before, prior to even starting Make the Dot, my co-founders and I, when we were working in Li & Feng, we were leading a lot of the 3D programs for a lot of US brands, US retailers, and specifically within those brands, we were working with their design teams specifically. And at that time, that was when what we learned was that being able to visualize the garment before the physical sample or physical garment is made is super powerful. Yeah. However, the steps to get to that visualization, it can get complex and it can be time consuming. So we essentially connected the dot with what generative AI is capable of, and also the use cases that we saw that were meaningful for the teams. And the reason why we started our focus with design team is because we shadowed this whole fashion supply chain throughout our experience. We touched on everywhere from design, product development, costing, sourcing, manufacturing, production, QC. Every single decision that is made all traces back to initially the designer's decision on the product. Designer really is at the core of of decision making when it comes to anything to do with the product. What kind of fabric is going to be used, and that impacts so many things. The combination of fabric, color, as I learn more and more about the industry, how much water is required to produce a certain garment, has everything traces back to those specific decisions of fabrication, of color, of what kind of product you're ultimately making. So we believe designer has a super important role, and at the same time is also most of the time is very overlooked. The workflow is very overlooked. So we wanted to so we really wanted to build tailor solutions around this, which is why we started with the beginning of the designer's workflow all the way in mood boarding, concept development, and now as we incorporate more and more features through design and helping designers generate the necessary asset to visually communicate the concept with any stakeholders that they need to collaborate with, be it could be merchandisers, could be sales team, could be marketing teams, or external supplier or product development teams. And that was the main thing that we observed, where design is at the core, but they actually work with a ton of cross-functional team in almost every single team that we've come across, every single brand that we've come across. So I think having much better tooling to support that visual communication is very important.
Yeah, for sure. What do you feel is the most transformative thing about AI, or even just Style Builder, for the designer?
For the designer, I think the most transformative thing is the speed of iteration, because the way I think of a designer's workflow, from what I've observed so far, is that designers could come up with an initial concept, but what I noticed throughout product development is that there could be dozens, if not 100 rounds of changes all the time. And today, if we in the traditional process where we're creating flat sketches and then making a physical sample out of that, in order to have a common visual, in order to do alignment, to get feedback, that iteration cycle is extremely long, is extremely labor intensive, time intensive, and costly as well. So what we're really seeing being transformative with Gen AI is that the cost of testing product ideas is lowering significantly. And that really would help the designer get a lot more feedback. And it's up to the designer how they want to take in that feedback, how much they want to incorporate it. But that is going to shrink the amount of cycles, or now the cycles are getting a lot shorter. And in that case, some of the work, what I noticed before is that designers might be doing a ton of work that could potentially be wasted if the products are not adopted. I often hear that adoption rate is fairly low across the board, and I think that is what Gen AI could really make a difference to designers.
It definitely can. I've often been repeating the story of me having to do 3D, which I still love, but I ended up, I estimate probably like 40 hours off and on, not 40 hours straight, but like a good work week of creating 3 different designs. And then we had a couple of iterations and met with the designers. They changed stuff. All of them got dropped. All of them. And I was like, it was great. I got more, time to practice 3D. But at the same time, I was like, those 40 hours, I could have done something else,
Exactly. And I think the script is flipped a little bit if you're able to get that alignment much earlier on. And you mentioned all of those got dropped, none of those got adopted. Maybe in the second iteration, when you make the next 3 or the next 6, one of them, if all it took was a day or two for you to get that feedback, then the remaining week, you could still spend that into going into the details. You could still make that, once it's adopted, you could still make that one 3D model where you then go into looking at the fit, or if you want to spend more time in sourcing, in actually working with manufacturer, and maybe looking across the board, the same kind of fabrication at 3 different kind of vendor at the costing. So all of those time saved is not necessarily just attributing it back into more sketching, but more so other parts of your workflow. Because as a designer, you do a lot more than just the sketching. Exactly. Exactly.
Yep.
So,
do you feel AI is a replacement, or can it be? I know what my answer is, but can it exist in tandem with what designers are already doing?
absolutely. I think AI is an amplifier. And I love that you mentioned several times before that AI is a tool. It's a any technology is a tool, and it highly depends on how we use it. I definitely see it as a 100x amplifier more so than replacement. Because in some adjacent industries, maybe not so adjacent, but in other industries where the role doesn't require a human judgment element. So let's say if we're looking at creating invoices or account receivable. So a lot of those things, how AI is applied to that is you might actually use AI to directly replace the job itself. But in the case of making garment, making apparel products at scale, and usually when I say at scale is we're talking about dozens, 80, 100, if not more pieces in a collection. When you're doing that, there are a ton of decisions that go in that cannot be completely automated, because if AI is purely looking at data, when we look at any successful brand, it's not just about looking at data. Brands should look at more data, but it's not just about looking at data. It's also about what the brand stands for, what kind of story you want to tell, who you are as a brand. And all of that is a lot of human decision. What AI can do is automate the more tedious part. Once you have a concept, once you align, once you get feedback, once you know what the concept is, what product you need to make, then currently there are a lot of tedious steps, in my opinion, throughout design and product development to bring it to life. And that's what AI is really good at automating. But having AI to come up with the entire answer from start to finish, from concept all the way to, let's just say, even generating the end tech pack, I don't think that's the answer. That is not the point to replace the whole team, because that product that sits in that tech pack would not be what the consumers want to buy.
Right.
So at the end of the day, we're not here to make garment for the sake of making garment. We're making something that consumers want to buy. And I think that's where a lot of the human in the loop need to happen. That's my take so far.
Yeah, that part. So we had a conversation recently about AI outside of this one, and where it's going. So where do you see Gen AI going next?
Specifically for fashion, I think at the moment, even for us, we've been quite focused on the, as a generation, we started going more into the metadata generation. Where I see it's going to be more and more useful is later in the workflow of a designer, where you're deeper into product development. You're really going back and forth, making those changes of your design. At the moment, there are a ton of documentations that gets passed around or updated. For instance, like the tech packs, the cost sheets, a ton of those still take up a designer's time, and the cross-functional team as well. I see AI being really, really good at, even from a costing perspective, making initial guesstimates. And what it can do is, because the more you're going to use it, the more data and information we feed it, the closer and more accurate it will get. So part of that is being able to have this kind of data that was not available even in the past decade of us. We had a lot of software, but without AI, we we would not be able to do that kind of estimation or calculation
Mhm.
before.
Yeah.
And having that information early on, I talk about alignment a lot. I think that is going to unlock another layer of product, iterative product alignment across design folks, but also everybody that they collaborate with. Um, and that is going to give time back to these cross-functional teams to really think about, well, if we have all this time back, what is the product we want to bring to market? How do we engage the consumer in a different way? Because something that haven't been talked about a lot is now that if you can make decisions earlier, if you can align earlier, you have photoreal visual assets so much earlier. How do we test the market
Mhm.
earlier instead of producing and then doing all the traditional photo shoot and then putting it online to sell and then placing all your social media ads? Now, I think the whole model can be questioned in terms of how do we get to the outcome, which is to create winning collections
Yeah.
that consumers are going to love.
Which is very exciting, especially for smaller creators and independent designers who I talk to all the time because we have much smaller budgets, smaller teams, and always trying to find a way to do more with less. So, yeah, that's exciting. All right. Well, thank you so much, Emilie, for being a guest this week on our special edition of CAD Chats and being the first of the creators or founders who create the tools for the creators to be on the show. So thank you so much. And next time, I don't know who we're going to have on, but the next last Thursday of the month will be our next CAD Chat. So we'll see you then.
Thanks for having me.